Okay, y'all ready to get started?
No.
Too bad. This week we're talking about Windows 8.1. One of the things that I want you to realize as you go through this book is most of the things that they talk about is in comparison to Windows 7. Like every operating system they talk about, they're constantly comparing it to Windows 7. So you're going to have to hear about that for a bunch of the rest of the chapters of this book. We're going to talk about installation, post-installation, Windows 8.1. First there was Windows 8, then there was 8.1 that addressed some of the problems with 8, but there were some pretty drastic changes that occurred that were maybe not met with fervent adoration. So we're going to talk about those changes. And then a little bit about local security. So first off, installation, you need a gigahertz or faster processor. A 32-bit version, you need a gig of RAM. 64, you need 2. Some available disk space. Not a ton, but just because it says 20 gigs of disk space definitely doesn't mean you can have like an 80 gig hard drive and not have any problems with space, as we've learned in here with some machines with 80 gig hard drives, right? And then we need to be able to have proper graphics. That's kind of an example of things that I think are so incredibly specific that it might not be a great test question, right? Some of the system requirements, the screen resolution minimum and the recommended screen resolution. They'd like for you to have an internet connection so you can keep things up to date. And this is where we kind of changed over. A multi-touch capable display. So they were trying to make this where it was available in both PC and tablet, but it was still the same operating system, which is a good idea, really. So for tablets, laptops, display screens, touch pages, there's lots of different ways that this multi-touch display can be presented. There were 3 retail editions, RT, Windows 8, and Windows 8 Pro. RT was pre-installed on some tablets, so you went to the store, bought a tablet, and automatically had Windows 8 on it. Then there was Windows 8 Pro. We talked about the difference between 7 Home and 7 Pro. Really, a lot of it has to do with remoting into the device and with being able to get on the domain. We talked a little bit about that this week. That's indicative of every Pro version of an operating system. That's going to be the difference between them. Windows 8.1, we had RT 8.1. The only really difference between this slide and the last one was Windows 8.1 Pro for students. So if you could prove that you were a student and you were currently enrolled, you could get this student version of the operating system really just at a reduced price, a way that Microsoft was trying to help out students. You can upgrade from just about any Windows 7 edition to a newer edition. Even Windows 7 Starter, we talked about them having that on netbooks and really low-powered computing devices. You could even upgrade that to Windows 8. They were really pushing the Windows 8 OS. When you're preparing to install Windows 8.1, the big difference between Windows 7 and 10 and 8.1 is that used to you be able to install the operating system and you would have this 30-day grace period to activate the product. They did not allow that in Windows 8.1 and they still don't. So one of the differences between installing your VMs this week and last week is you're going to have to input a product code in the installation, which I will provide to you. So at this point they said no, nobody gets to install without making sure they have a valid product code. That was one of the things that made this super annoying for people. I don't know why. People did not like that. So the activation is really early in installation. It's like step 2 or 3. It's before you even give the computer a name or make an account under it. And there's a reminder to keep that product key in a safe place. If you ever need to reinstall Windows, you need that number. If you don't have that number, you have to go buy another one, right? You're not really paying for the disk the software is on or the download of the software. You're paying for the product key code. That's where all the importance is. If you want to purchase online from Microsoft, if you have a Microsoft account, you can do that. A Microsoft account is free. We'll talk about those a little more in a chapter coming up. And there's some services attached to it that are free as well. Some of you will probably take advantage of the OneDrive, right? Yes, Microsoft OneDrive. That's like a Google Drive or Dropbox is, but it's the Microsoft flavor of it. That comes free with that account. So you can sign in 3 different ways. You can do a local account, which is just like you would do on your home computer, where maybe you have one for you, one for a child, one for a roommate, wife, just for other people within the house, and they all have their own logins. You can do a Microsoft account, which will automatically log you into Microsoft stuff. So if you have things synced across different Microsoft accounts, maybe things with your Xbox, that would show up on your PC. So that could be kind of handy. Are you cheering for Xbox?
No.
No?
Yes.
Yes. And also a domain account. So again, that's connecting to the domain controller server that houses all of your username and password information. And someone else controls it generally. If you're signing with a local account, it looks like this. This only has one account, so that's why it appears so stark. There's only one account that's been set up. You can run the upgrade assistant before you purchase it, and it will make sure that your operating system has all the things that it needs to be able to upgrade to a newer version. So it does things like finding new drivers for your hardware. Maybe there's new drivers or better drivers that are more compatible with the new version of Windows. So it's going to go ahead and download those things to get you ready to upgrade. Otherwise, after the upgrade, they might not work, or they may not work as well. The upgrade assistant online, you can tell it what you want to keep, which files are important for you to keep. So we talked about the difference last week between an upgrade and a custom installation. When you installed your VMs, you used a custom installation, right? Because there was nothing that you were worried about keeping, because it's a virtual machine. But if you're upgrading, there's probably things on your computer that you're interested in keeping around. So some of the things that you can choose to keep are Windows settings, personal files, and different applications. It will keep them between upgrades, which is very nice. Or you can just keep nothing if you want to do a clean boot all the way. Here's the upgrade assistant, and it's letting you know that based on the version of Windows that you have, you can buy either one of these, and the prices are different for each one. For most home users, they just need Windows 8.1 plain. For most business users, they need the Pro version. And then here you can review your order, and you can request to have a copy of the Windows DVD sent to you. In case you ever have to install Windows again, you don't have to worry about getting the software, because you've already got a DVD. The installation can be web-based, or you can do the traditional Windows setup like we did in class last week. Here's the spot where you have to enter the product key. On this window, on Windows 7, there was a little thing over here that said skip, and it popped up a message and said, hey, you're going to have to do this eventually. Are you sure you want to go ahead and skip it? And you could say yes. But in Windows 8.1, no skipping. You've got to turn it in right then. The out-of-box experience, or the UBI, is one of the final steps of the setup. That lets you personalize color schemes and things like that. If you go to Best Buy and buy a computer and you bring it home and set it up, what you're going through before you get to the desktop is the out-of-box experience. So you make accounts, you agree to terms and conditions, you know, those things that none of us ever read. We just click check and go. Pick out your color schemes, things like that, and also select, do you just want to make a local account, do you want to use a Microsoft account, things like that. There's the first screen, personalizing colors. There's some express settings that come in and ask you questions like, do you want to go ahead and find network drivers when they're available and download them? Or you can customize those settings. If you're a security person, you might want to check and see what you're agreeing to, right? Or even if you're not, what are you agreeing to before you do it? And here's the start screen that popped up. So this is the part that was not well received, because we've been using the start menu since every iteration of Windows, I think, even Windows 3.1. So when they came up with the start screen, and you can see this is really going to be helpful for somebody on a mobile interface, right? On a Surface tablet, being able to swipe around and pinch and zoom different things, but not having that start menu was kind of a problem. There were some things that you could install, like Classic Shell, that were freeware, that would install start screen back for you, start menu as opposed to start screen. I know I installed that for dozens and dozens of people at the time when this came out, when I was working. So that was really the part that was completely different, was that start screen. After you've installed Windows for post-installation, updated drivers from your manufacturer, find the recommended resolution for your display. Sometimes updating your display driver will give you a lot more options as far as resolution, things that are much more pleasing to the eye. Me, I'm fairly blind, so I don't like giant resolution. I like things to come down a little bit. If you touch an empty area anywhere on the desktop or click and then release, you get this contextual menu. That's not new to Windows 8.1, but the touch part of it is. Install your updates. You can manually check. You need the important updates for sure, because that's where a lot of the security fixes happen. Check out other updates and then turn on recommended things like your Microsoft Office suite. Those initial updates can take days to complete because it's constantly contacting the Microsoft servers, downloading something, installing it, maybe restarting the computer, and on and on and on. So that does take a little bit of time. If you're using a virtual machine, there's something called guest editions. And it'll normally have guest in it somewhere. Different VM hypervisors call it different things. When I was trying to make Ubuntu work for this class that we're going to be going through in a few weeks, this drove me absolutely batty, the guest editions part. There are some visual effects and things and resolutions that just don't work quite right on Windows 8.1 or Ubuntu. And installing guest editions, which are provided by whoever makes the hypervisor, are supposed to make that better. I personally had a whole lot of trouble with that, so I had to find a kind of a way around it for this class. But normally the virtual machine is going to pop up and say, this would probably work better if you used guest editions. Would you like to go download it? So they do make it easy on us if you're going to use it in the long term. Remove any unnecessary software. If you go buy a PC, you plug it in when you get home, you can bet there's trials of all kinds of things on it. Like what? What's the junk that comes on your computer that you want to get rid of? McAfee.
The Walmart photo thing.
The photo things, the Snapfish photo thing, toolbars, Norton, right?
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things that come on that are trying to get you, things that speed up your PC, trying to get you to purchase things. So you might want to go off and take that kind of thing out. Just make sure you know what you're getting rid of, right? Be sure to do a quick Google search, figure that out. Some are useful, but in general we kind of call that bloatware.
Yep.
It's things that bloat up the system and make it work a little less effectively. When you're removing software in Windows 8, you can go to the apps screen, just right click on something and say uninstall. That's pretty easy. Carbonite, there's another good one that's bloatware that's on lots of stuff. Not that Carbonite is bad, I think it's great. It's just everywhere. You can create a backup image. There's a system image utility. I would recommend you know what an image is now, because you're going to hear about them in lots of other classes. It's essentially a snapshot of exactly what the operating system looks like right at that time. And then if something happens to your computer, you can restore that image and make it look like it did at that time. And it's actually a very, very handy backup tool. You can use what's called the file history applet to make that system image. And this is what that looks like. So where do you want to save the backup? If you wanted to make system images every once in a while, or set it to do that, let's say once a month, and put it on an external hard drive, that would be a really good backup for a personal computer. So file history is essentially saving versions of a file. So you can do automatic backups of your documents, music, pictures, videos. You can specify other important locations where you want things backed up. So you can go and pick a retrieve an old version of a file. If you are editing a Word document and you make a mistake in it and close it, you can go back to the way it was before you made the mistake in it. So that can be helpful. Here's what file history looks like. It'll tell you where these file history is, whether it's on or off, and where these things have been saved. In a control panel, you can go and turn that on. It's pretty easy. There's just a button, turn on, turn off. Shutting down Windows 8. You can use a keyboard, or you can use a mouse, or the touch capability to do that. There's the power user menu, which is what we were trying to find in another class the other day before we realized, hey, that's only a Windows 8, Windows 10 thing, where you can say shut down or sign out, save you a couple clicks.
Can
You
you
can
just hit
go-
Control Alt Delete?
Or all the keyboard.
To shut down?
Yeah, no, that doesn't, that's what I
Yeah, you can do that from Control Alt Delete, yeah.
Okay, there you go.
see. It's
How about that?
We
We all learned that.
So
You can
Alt
also
F4
shut
will
down
do
from the
that.
power menu. You can hit power and this little context menu pops up. If you want to get to the power user screen, which was this back here, what's the key combination, Christian? What's the key combination to get to this menu?
You hit the Windows button and it brings that up.
No.
I never really use Windows 8 that much.
Okay,
I
it's in 10 too.
Okay.
It's really handy. It's
The little button to the right at the bottom.
you can do that, or you can do Control
left.
X.
I
This
just
gives you
usually
like
use-
power options, device manager, disk management, like kind of advanced things that you might need to use.
I usually just use Control Alt Delete and then use that.
Okay.
Also, it comes with the Windows X.
You've even got access to the command prompt. So instead of going to start menu and searching for something, a lot of the really common things we do as net admins is in that menu.
Isn't
So
that
it's
also with the Windows and X key? The Windows key? and
Is it
X?
Windows and X?
Yeah.
It is Windows key and X, yes. Yes. I can be wrong, it's okay, it happens sometimes. Okay. Navigating and configuring. With the touch and the multi-touch gestures with Windows 8, what made it kind of unique, corners and edges actually do things. So moving to a certain corner or tapping a corner will make things open up and do things. They've got Windows stores, apps, the on-screen keyboard. If you're using a tablet and you don't have a keyboard plugged in, well, you need something to type with. So that's where the on-screen keyboard comes up. Here's the start screen and the touch screen. You can have 10 simultaneous touches, and it all means something. Why 10? 10 fingers, right? So that it supports that many touches at once, right? Without a keyboard, you can have the on-screen keyboard where you can type. So when it senses you've gone to something that has text in it, it will normally just pop that up for you. Or you can enable or disable that. That's in the ease of access menu. There's some key and keyboard mouse combinations. A lot of them have to do with the Windows key, like that power user menu we just talked about. Some tablets will have a Windows button on them, especially if they're Microsoft branded. The lock screen will show up in certain conditions. When Windows starts up, it might lock out. After you're not using it, it might lock the screen so that nobody else can come up behind you and look at your stuff. Or you can choose lock or use Windows key L to be able to do that. I use Windows key L for that a lot. Just like on your cell phone. When you first boot up your cell phone, you have to type in a code to get to things. It's the exact same thing. You can customize that lock screen. They really improved kind of the pictures and the colors and stuff here. It looks really nice. The start screen, there's some different vocabulary associated with the start screen. Used to just be the start menu. Well, now it's the start screen. It's got live tiles, different scrolls and zooms, and a user tile that I want to point out. There's 2 different tile sizes. I'll show you all that in just a second. There's not really an apps button or anything to speak, but in Windows 8.1 now there's 4 different sizes of tiles. So they're kind of trying to customize it, make it look pretty. And the apps open up in things called a group screen. So looking at this tells you a lot about what these things are called. So you can see there's a kind of tile there's a smaller one. So they've kind of customized that out where you can make things bigger or smaller depending on if it's something you use a lot. If you stream a lot of Netflix, you might want a really big Netflix tile right in this first column so you don't have to scroll over to see it.
It's a good thing it doesn't grow with the amount of times you use it.
That would be scary. Yeah,
You know how much of that screen that would take up a month?
all of it?
A lot.
A lot, yeah. You can use the horizontal bar to scroll and see all of the tiles. You can drag things around and customize it a lot. It has this thing called semantic zoom, where you can pinch and expand to view the whole start menu or jump to just a little section of it. There's a specific phrase for that, semantic zoom. That'll be a test question. And you can customize tiles and put different logos and things on them in that screen. So here they've zoomed out. They've shrunk the tiles down using that semantic zoom tool. But here's what they would look like normally. Now this is the app screen, so if you're not using the start menu portion of this, this is how you get to other applications within Windows 8.1. Now look at all the bloatware. Evernote search,
Yeah.
Google Earth could be considered, McAfee,
Internet
Lenovo
Explorer.
support, Kindle. They need to get rid of their bloatware.
Internet Explorer.
Internet Explorer. That's another example. Here's what it looks like to change the background and the accent colors. The user tile is just the picture that you put in is normally of yourself that shows your picture, and you can change that as well.
Oh God, no, stop that.
Moving in between apps, you can use gestures on the edge to be able to get back to the start screen using either your finger or the mouse. You can use Windows Flip, which we talked about last week, Flip and Flip 3D using the Alt and the Tab, or the Windows key and the Tab. And there's the different styles for whether the Flip 3D kind of pulled everything out so you could see every window open and cycle through it. So that still exists in Windows 8. If you touch the top left-hand corner of the screen, you see what's called the back tip, which takes you to the last thing you were doing. So switching in between can be a little easier with that. Then there's Windows Flip. So we don't have Flip 3D with Windows 8.1, but we do have Flip where we can Alt-Tab in between different windows that are open. The switchers on the left-hand side, if you use the Windows key in the tab, it looks like this. It's all the current open windows. Windows key Q opens up a search bar, which is kind of nice because you can search anywhere on the computer, and that can be helpful. Windows key D opens up the desktop GUI. You can pin programs to this taskbar like you could in Windows 7, but again, there's no start button. So you're going to have to do Windows key D again, or go to one of the corners, or whatever your preferred method is to get back to the start screen. There's not the 3D look to the desktop before. Everything has gone a little bit flatter, a little bit more Mac-ish, if you ask me. So the desktop kind of looks like this, and you can see we have some transparency and things like we did Windows 7, but it doesn't have a shadowed look to it. It's very flat. You can open up that desktop at startup and make it not have that start screen, so it kind of feels more like Windows 7. They can have the same background. You can replace the start screen with just showing a list of all the apps that are available. If you don't want to go through menus and all the tiles, you don't have to have that. So you can also just list the apps when they're first viewed. You can control where Start opens if you have more than one display. So every computer in here has 2 displays. If you want your Start screen to show up on one side and the desktop show up on the other, you can do that too. You can set that up in taskbar and navigation properties. There's lots of options about the corner navigation, the start screen, and taskbar. So one of the big changes, we used to have Windows Explorer, which you know of being the little file icon that sits on the taskbar. And you click it and it shows you a list of all the files in the computer, and you can go to different drives and do things like that. So from Windows 8 on, we call that file management. That's a test question too. File management, not Windows Explorer. or File Explorer would be appropriate. Windows key E will get you there. That looks a little bit different. It's got the flatter look again, and they kind of added this ribbon here, like Microsoft Office has the ribbon that depending on what you click, the menu options might change. They did that same thing here in the File Explorer. There's some options on the pane. You can show favorites and libraries like we talked about last week. There's the contextual tab. So if you click on a picture, it understands that it's a picture. And it asks you, do you want to rotate that picture? Do you want to set it as your background? Because it understands what kind of file it is. Normally when we delete something, it goes in the recycle bin. File history is another way. If that's turned on, we might go back to be able to get files that were previously in the recycle bin. And here's what file history looks like. So here's a snapshot of all the files that changed on Saturday, July 6th. And if you want to go back and look at those, you can just click on them and restore the file back to that state. You can install, it calls them modern apps in the App Store, so those are just things that are available in the Windows Store, which looks like this. So it really just looks like the Apple Store, but it's got categories and things like that. You can buy apps for pretty cheap in the Windows Store. Here's shopping in the Windows Store. So they've selected an app called PDF Touch. So this lets you annotate on PDF documents and write on them with your finger or a pen of some kind to be able to see. But you can check that app out before you get it. Each app, when you check on it, or when you right-click on it, you're going to get different contextual things that can be done with that app, kind of depending on has it been pinned to the taskbar or the start menu. When you have updates for the App Store, you're going to see a little icon that's going to say the number of updates that you have available to install, and that's the Windows Store icon. In modern apps, you'll have a little title bar across the top that will give you some options. One of the cool things about Windows 8.1 is what they call Snap. So we talked about in Windows 7, if you wanted to maximize a window, you could drag it up to the top of the screen and it would kind of make an outline as though it was going to maximize. If you let go, it maximizes. You can snap it to the left or to the right. They improved that in Windows 8. So now you can snap to a third of the screen or the top left-hand corner if you wanted to. So they gave more options in Snap in Windows 8.1. Okay, a little bit about security. Windows Defender is not just anti-spyware anymore. It's a replacement for Microsoft Security Essentials. So it's a full-blown antivirus, anti-malware suite now, and it's free, and it still looks a little bit the same, except it does a whole lot more now than it did in Windows 7. Here's our Windows Defender settings, what we're going to scan, how often we're going to scan it, how long are we going to quarantine things if we think they might be infected. Local accounts are administered using the User Account Control Panel. In Windows 8.1, it was just under Settings and Accounts. That's how you would be able to get there. On the account pane, it looks like this. This is where you can change your account picture to be a scary parrot thing. You can create an account picture here if you've got a webcam or something, be able to take your picture with it. If you want to add users, you'll be doing this. It depends, again, how is that person going to sign in? Do they have a Microsoft account? Do they need to make one? Is it a local account? Is this a domain? You're not going to see domain settings if it's not a pro version of the operating system, because those are the only ones that have them. You can add a child account, so you can set up a child account and restrict their access to certain things when they log in. And that's a feature of family safety. So that's how you can set up family safety, add the child's account, and then make restrictions based on that. That's a pretty cool feature for parents. You can open Smart Screen settings from the Action Center, which you use in the bottom right-hand corner, and it's actually right there. Change Windows to Smart Screen settings. And Smart Screen warns you before you download something weird on the internet that may or may not be malicious. So in this case, it's saying, when there's an app that's unapproved or unrecognized, what do you want us to do with it? Do you want to just run it anyway? Do you want us to tell you about it first? This is kind of user account control-ish. Not quite, but it is with downloading apps for sure.